Hi viewers, thanks for joining and welcome to this Signicat webinar. My name is Jasper Mielop and I will be your host. With me today are Richard and Andy as our guest speakers. Today's topic will be about simplifying AML and KYC with Signicat Trust Orchestration. I will now hand over the word to Richard.
Thank you, Jasper. Hello, and thank you for waiting patiently. And as Jasper mentioned, I think we are everyone on the call now. So hello to everyone. I'm Richard. I'm working at Signicat as a key account manager based in the Stockholm office. And together with me, I have Andy. Please introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Lee. I'm the original founder of Sonic, who were acquired by Signicat very excitedly last year. I have 25 plus years experience in the anti-fraud, risk management, compliance space, working at fintechs, online banks, e-commerce companies, and through various consultancy roles.
Great. And today we're gonna talk to you a bit about how you can simplify KYC, AML, and compliance through Signicat's Trust Orchestration tool. But also we're gonna talk about how we can actually increase your business as well. And one thing that is really interesting is to discuss is how we can accept more genuine customers through these processes that you are running today or are thinking about running. So that is something that we're going to dive into. But first, I would just like to set the scene of where we are with Signicat and how this Signicat Trust Orchestration tool fits so well into everything else we're doing, because I know we have existing customers to us and perhaps new customers to us listening in. So I would just like to start with that. So Jasper, please change the slide. And you can take the next one. So what we at Signicat do, we about bringing trust and security together through technology. So it's all about people meeting technology, customers meeting companies, customers trusting companies, and also companies trusting customers. And that's where we have been operating for a long period of time. We have been very well known within the identity proofing world, as well as e-signature. And now with the trust orchestration part, we get a really good fit where we can improve our services even more for our existing customers and new customers. And please, the next slide, Jasper. And what we see then in the market, why do we have a demand for these services today? Well, we see that consumers that are using online services are expecting sleek, good UX way of becoming a customer to a company or ordering services through a company. But also, especially within banking and financial sector, we have very high demanding legislations saying what and how this should be done in a proper way. And this is obviously a balance between the UX and following the legislations. And here we help our customers in getting a good UX experience, but also following all the rules and laws that are applicable. On top of that, we see a lot of things happening in the world, especially within different technology drivers. I know everyone perhaps in this call has already tried out OpenAI and the ChatGPT. I mean, we're on a constant change in the technology, and that sets demands for a modular way of thinking of these type of processes. So we will speak about that as well. And this is really where the orchestration part fits in, because historically, Signicat's APIs, we have been able to send you a lot of data, but we haven't given you any tool to orchestrate it. So please, the next slide. And I know that a lot of you who are listening in are from the Nordic region. And when we think about onboarding, KYC, and so on, we have really good standards in forms of bank EIDs, as we call them within Signicat. And that gives us a great UX. It gives us a good understanding of who's actually your customer. But we will discuss a bit further today, me and Andy, how you need to think about that. Perhaps that's not enough, and we see a lot of risks with only relying on EIDs only, and we need to have a multi-layered approach where we look at, proof of address, manual checks, and so on. So that is also a topic that we're going to discuss today, and hopefully you will find this very interesting. And I forgot to mention, but please ask us questions in this webinar, and we will answer them as if we have the time, but otherwise we will reach out to you afterwards to be able to answer those questions as well. Good, so perhaps over to you, Andy, and the next slide. So the questions. I know you enjoy going to dinner parties, Andy, and always when you're on a dinner party, you get the question of what are you doing and how are you saving the world? So could you please give us some insights in that?
Thank you, Richard. I'd love to make a claim that I saved the world, but that's probably not 100% accurate. So it's really interesting. I suppose it's two questions, as you quite rightly say. What happens to all of us when we go to a dinner party and sit next to someone we don't know, and they say, "And what do you do for a career?" And I could talk about anti-money laundering or anti-terrorist financing or card not present fraud or consumer not present fraud or impersonation, identity theft, etc. But I try and keep it simple. And that's what we do at Signicat as well. It's about simplexity. And what do I mean by that? I often throw a question back at them. So that's the second question. And I say, if you were to apply in this digital age for an account online, a bank account or a credit card or a loan or a trading account or a gaming account, and we, by the way, will also talk about other events, not just onboarding. I say you probably, in the UK, you'd provide your name, address, your date of birth, an email, a mobile phone number. In the Nordic regions, it might be provided through an EID and verified. I say, do you expect to be accepted? And 100% of the time, everyone says, yes, I should. And so I say, well, what if a criminal off the back of a data breach impersonates you? What if they provide your name, your address, your date of birth, a valid email, a valid mobile phone? Should they be accepted? And the answer is always, well, of course they shouldn't. It's not me. And my response is quite simply, but it's the same data. It's the same information. So what I try and do in my career and what we do through the products is to try and not only confirm the usual, know your customer, that say Andy Lee exists and resides where he claims and is, whether I'm a politically exposed person or whether I'm a sanctioned individual, but also to try and ascertain in this digital world, because a digital identity is much more than just simple KYC and validating data. It's about also trying to ensure it is me. And that is key to what we do here at Signicat and what we did previously at Sonic, moving into the Signicat world.
Great. And Andy, you mentioned that you need to sort of collect and gather more information about people in order to actually be more certain and of the identity proofing. How would that go about? It sounds like there's a lot of big data that needs to be analyzed.
Well, look, absolutely. And big data, and we're going to talk a bit more about this, to us is about access to a wide range of big data, but then only utilizing the data that's necessary to perform a purpose. And that purpose could be to accept me as an applicant. That purpose could be to have an audit trail that you perform the checks and you know your customers. That purpose could be for analysis. It could be for agents in a back office reviewing applications. And this really what big data is. And like with the previous slide, Richard, there are so many components within the Signicat ecosystem. And that leads us on nicely to orchestration, doesn't it? Because, what is orchestration? And, if you think of an orchestra, I'm sure we've all listened to music. Within an orchestra, you might have a string section, you might have a wind section, you might have a percussion section. Well, in our world, let's, instead of those sections, have an electronic ID section, a document section, an authentication section, a risk management section. And then within those sections, like within a string section, you might have violins or cellos. Within, say, the risk section, and we'll talk about this throughout this webinar, you might have device profiling and interrogation services. You might have mobile profiling. You might have email. And all these services throw up big data. And so the next part of orchestration is using the correct and the contextualized and relevant pieces of data to enable that decision throughout a customer's life cycle too.
Yeah, we can change to the next slide. I think we have a picture on, what we really say with big data and what we are really trying to achieve. And I think what I'm really excited about and what I love telling our customers is how we can, identify the good actors. Obviously, we need to identify the bad actors, but identify the good actors will, increase the revenue for our customers.
Well, absolutely. And a really important message is, in my intro, I spoke about my background in fraud and risk management. And often those teams and compliance teams, there's always sort of in-house jokes in companies that they're the business prevention units. And, fundamentally, they're there to ensure that the business, having spent lots of money on marketing campaigns and clearly having cost per acquisition targets for customers, that they are onboarding genuine people, genuine customers that are going to have a lifetime value to our clients and hopefully our prospective clients. And so, bizarrely, a lot of these risk services we talk about in terms of the overall trust orchestration platform are actually serving up good data points in this world of big data. And, I often talk about the needle in the haystack. If we find all the good data points, and we're going to talk about this in the digital picture in a second, if we can extract all the good data points, the bad ones should stick out. They rather than searching for the needle, clear away all the good, and the bad actors should just make themselves very clear.
Great, yeah, and I think we should really just, if we can move to the next picture, Jasper. I think also what we're really trying to say here is that, building a good way of orchestration that will allow you to actually accept more genuine customer. You will get a better UX experience. You don't need to push everyone through the same sort of KYC with the tools that we can provide. So for the next slide as well, Jasper, I think this is how we like to illustrate what we're doing. And could you just elaborate on this, and also taking the consideration if you would be, in the Nordic market only today, you're using EIDs as your way of identifying your customers. How would this play into this picture that we're looking at now?
Well, absolutely. And this is probably one of my favorite slides, and we've been using it for a long, long time. And, there's an old phrase we have here in the UK of a picture paints 1,000 words. And, I can certainly speak about 10,000. So, what are we doing here? I've used the phrase simplexity a while ago. This particular picture is probably calling 6 third-party APIs via a single API connection to Signicat. And so, first of all the heavy lifting's done. The connections are there, the auto compilations to the APIs of all these vendors. But I'm just going to focus on the good here. And let's try and build up this digital picture of an applicant, and hopefully a good applicant to be accepted. We'll also throw out what could be some examples of bad actors. So if we look at the box in green, the green outline, not the considerations one. We talk about the identity. So yes, through your EIDs, does this person exist? Is their date of birth confirmed? Do they reside where they claim, or with the information coming back from the EID? And then obviously, clearly, from a regulatory perspective, checking if they're a politically exposed person, checking if they've got any current or previous sanctions. Take all that as read. That's what you get already through existing Signicat relationships. But as an example, in the United Kingdom, where we don't have EIDs, it's replaced with registry lookups, and the same in many, many other countries as well, if you're looking to expand to other countries where, say, EIDs might not be present. And EIDs are certainly stronger than simple registry lookup. So in the United Kingdom, people often look up to the electoral roll or a various credit database. But, you know, let's not forget, with EIDs, there could still be issues at provisioning when the accounts behind them were originally set up with things like mobile ID. There could be issues with provisioning. There could be account takeovers, etc. So risks as a result of fraud off the back of either primarily impersonation fraud can still prevail. You know, they're not solely related to the United Kingdom or the United States or other countries where EIDs aren't present. Now, let's build up this picture a bit further. Let's first of all say, well, hang on, this is the first time we've seen this identity, this address, this email, this mobile phone. That's a good thing. Yeah, you know, having 10 applications from the same individual or 10 people at the same address might clearly be suspect. And we do that. I said I was going to highlight some bad actors. But let's now get other digital information in relation to risk. So where we've got device profiling here, we can get a device ID. So we can go, that device ID has been associated with frauds before by you. That's the first application you've seen from the device. So far we've said, okay, all the traditional KYC information matches. That's the first 5 data points in the green box. Now we can go a 6th point. It's the first application from this device. We could go, my address is in Stockholm, and my device that's made the application is in Stockholm in Sweden. We can then go and do some mobile profiling and go, and my mobile phone number provided is issued by a Swedish carrier. It's currently live in Sweden. I think we're now up to about 10 data points, Richard, are all very clean data points, and I'm going to an extreme. But also we can do geolocation checks. So we can go, Andy Lee has applied from a device within 10 meters of his house, 1 kilometer of his house, etc. Or in a bad way, it could be a different country and 500 kilometers away, etc. So, you know, we're now up to 12, 13 data points. What you also get with a lot of these third-party risk services is information, federalized history. So the device vendor might say, we first saw that device a year ago, and none of our other clients globally have reported it as fraudulent. And they use their own expertise to return their own recommendations and fraud scores as well. And that can happen across all these different types of vendors. Finally, we might want to look at the email. You know, Andy Lee at svonic.com, my old one prior to joining Signicat last year, was registered, I think, on the 1st of February 2012. Would someone back in 2012 have set up an email address knowing they'd compromised my identity off a data breach over a decade later? Probably not. These vendors can also say, we've seen that X period of time ago. No one's reported it as fraud. Even how many companies have searched against that email recently? Can you imagine, in the world of impersonation, of identity theft, fraudsters are not just going to make one application using the information. They're going to sweat that, what they think is an asset. You know, they're going to make tens, hundreds of applications to try and get through and utilize that information. So in summary, we've got the 5 or so KYC data points about my existence and residency and date of birth. We've got about 5 or 6 around everything's unique. There's no associations, no other applications from that computer. We've got 5 or 6 geolocation data attributes surrounding the device and mobile phone. We've got 5 or so data attributes around history. and some fraud scores too. We've probably called out about 25, 30 pieces of binary data there, Richard, that can be brought together within a matter of 3 to 5 seconds off a single API call, contextualized to build this digital picture in the world of digital identity of an applicant. So in summary, a fraudster trying to make an application off the back of identity theft may have had to have taken control of an EID. They may have had to have used a different device for every application that costs money, have maybe set up full mobile phone contracts on full contracts for all of the identities, traveled and sat outside the houses of all the victims of identity thefts. I forgot to mention, confirming that, it's registered at, say, a bank as well. We have many more attributes as well, whether it's around bot detection, behavioral analytics, how long people have spent on web pages. We can go further into domain profiling and things like that. So fundamentally, a single API connection, we enable orchestration through all those components we've discussed, be it EID, registry lookups. We can bring documents. We can bring proof of live selfies into it. Mobile ID could be provisioned for ongoing authentication, along with all these digital risk checks can all take place. And that is orchestration. And it's all these enhanced services that we're now bringing from the acquisition of Sonic into the wider Signicat family and ecosystem that's creating this trusted digital world through trust orchestration.
Great, Andy, thanks. And just to sum up this slide, I mean, from a customer experience, I guess that me as a customer, if I was part of an onboarding, I wouldn't really notice everything that happens behind the scenes through the orchestration tool, but it enables our customers to do all the checks necessary. So in that way, we say that we can actually ensure that our customers can accept more genuine customers with a better view experience. Is that correct?
Hey, look, that's absolutely right. And I'm very conscious that I gave some very clean examples at an extreme, but surely everyone would hope that the vast majority of their applicants are genuine. And that's the case. And within, as I said, from someone hitting apply now or whatever it may be, within 3 to 5 seconds, this information could be returned. And as we said, tying it back into big data, there are hundreds, if not thousands of bits of data of these services. Part of our skills and our experience is being able to advise our clients on what are the relevant pieces of data and only process those bits of data and make sure that the right bits of data are also tracked from an audit perspective, are available from an analysis perspective. But absolutely, from the moment that customer hits apply now, you're looking at about 5 seconds to build up this picture and hopefully accept them. But also, there will be exceptions. Scorecards can be built to handle exceptions. Processes can be stepped out to invoke document uploads, to invoke selfie, proof of live portrait type services too.
Great, Andy, thanks. So I think we should move on to the next part. And I think that's also something many listeners are interested in, like how are we creating these flows within the orchestration tool today?
Well, look, and this is the new flow system that's going live. And it really is what it says. It's a workflow system where workflows can be initiated with conditional routing and steps in and out. And on the left panel in this example is where you start and people can drag in what are the personal details. So, what is the information that is captured during, say, an application journey. But further down, customers will be able to scroll and drag and drop in the various types of services like the device profiling, the email profiling, the mobile validation. And what the workflow behind the scenes then does is auto compiles to the various APIs that are appropriate by country. So we have multiple services. So we might have mobile services that are better in one country than another. And it doesn't matter. Different branches can be catered for to serve up that service for a specific country. And this, so whilst there's the actual orchestration workflow behind the scenes, customers will be able to self-service and build up the flow of what services get called in what order, what are the conditions, what are the branches to call this service in this country and a different one in another.
So if I am, as a customer, have different, different type of databases I want to access for different type of information, I can easily change between different vendors when being connected to our APIs.
Absolutely. The API connection work is behind the scenes. That's the heavy lifting of the orchestration engine itself. This is the really nice user interface in front of it where customers can configure and set their own designs of what is called and when, what are the conditions, etc.
Great, thanks, Andy. So perhaps just to sum up, we have the next slide, please. What's the lessons learned of these minutes that you've been listening to us, and what are we trying to hear? And what do you think is the most important for our audience to learn from this webinar?
Well, it's interesting. KYC has always been associated with onboarding. And surely as a business, everyone wants to know their customer through the life cycle of the customer's tenure with them. So, but onboarding is not purely about KYC or traditional. It's about the risk management. It's around the wider digital profiles, digital identities of customers. So there's much more to onboarding than simple KYC, proving I exist, proving I live where I claim, etc. And back to my initial point, KYC is not just about onboarding. A really interesting example or two we can give is, I could apply for an account, be accepted. We break down data silos too. So we could say, as an example, Andy Lee is logging in from the same device he used when he applied. Or Andy Lee is now in America, but he's using the same computer he used when he applied or used last time. And a workflow could then go, well, first time we've seen him in a new country, let's see where his phone is. Oh, it's live in America, his known phone. So we can actually track data and join it up. And as I go, say, to America again, you don't now need to do that check. So as you know your customer, me in this example, you should actually have to do less and less checks. It costs money to acquire data via API in these services. So your cost of maintaining me should actually come down as I generate more lifetime value for your businesses. However, when there's an exception, and when something else is happening, which could be me being in a new country, but it could be me, say, taking over my account. Sorry, someone taking over my account, not me taking over my own. And that's when the workflow could identify an anomaly and go and do additional checks real time behind the scenes. And so these are the real lessons. There's more to onboarding than pure KYC. Let's bring these digital risk elements in, which also, for good applicants, enable a super fast experience fit for the digital world. But let's also help our clients to truly know their customers through the life cycle as well.
Great. So I think we're ready for the next slide, and that is basically the summary. So thank you everyone for listening in. Now we will have a question and answers. We have received a lot of questions during these minutes, so thank you everyone for that. And if we're not able to have the time to answer them now, we will reach out to you after this webinar to the mail address that you signed up for this webinar to. Also, just want to take the chance of advertising that we also will be present at the AML event Penningtvättdagarna in Stockholm, 3rd and 4th of May. So we will be there, and if you would like to discuss with us physically, and we will deep dive into this even more. But surely, if you have any questions, just reach out to us as well, and we're more than happy to set up a meeting. But Andy, let's move into the question and answers. And I have a list here of different questions that we have received during this call. Yeah, so first one. What is the frequency of updating a third-party record in the solution among existing clients?
Okay. Well, again, I think I mentioned earlier that we try and take the heavy lifting away from our customers. So our customers' tech teams and development teams can focus on their own products and services. So we keep up to date with all API version control, credential management on behalf of customers. When new vendors, a big thing is about future proofing. And what is for sure, new vendors will enter the market. There will be new innovations. Our customers will want to accept customers in new territories or new channels. And that's where we simply connect to those services and will enable them in that flow tool that we briefly showed earlier. We work very closely with all our clients. We update them as to new services, vendors that are performing particularly well in certain markets, etc. And it can simply be configuration changes rather than tech projects client side to onboard and access new innovations or enhance product offerings via existing vendor APIs.
Good. Hopefully that was the right answer. The next one, what content partners does the system integrate with?
Wow. Well, as mentioned, we clearly have traditional registries, which are obviously important in countries where EIDs aren't present. So from a traditional KYC perspective, be it government data source bases, be it credit header files in some countries, utility databases. And, the interesting thing is in some countries, there's an abundance of data available. In some, there's a real dearth of data. And it's about accessing what's best on a country by country basis. But then we have all the digital, we have the PEP sanctions. We have then all the digital risk, and it could be behavioral biometrics. It could be robotic detection. It could be device profiling, as we discussed earlier. It could be mobile profiling, mobile verification. And all of these services do come with a slight caveat. It depends on various data protection rules on a country by country basis, but we manage all that too and can advise what's appropriate. Email, domain profiling. We've even recently onboarded forged document detection services as well. So there is a whole raft, and we have a vendor team that constantly analyzes and researches all the new innovations entering this sort of reg tech market, and where either requested by our clients or identified via our team, we enable them in our sort of mini marketplace, the ecosystem of trust orchestration. So, anyone out there watching this, if there are any services that we haven't discussed or that you'd like to talk to us about, we'd love to hear. And I think when Sphonic itself was founded in 2012, we had 5 API connections as part of our MVP. At the point Signicat acquired us, we were up to 95. And with the various Signicat offerings, I think it's about 150 or something now. So it really is becoming the sort of go-to marketplace for reg tech and fin crime, or access to reg tech and fin crime services.
Great. I think you touched upon it, but we have one question. Do you offer transaction monitoring?
Indeed, we do. And we focused a lot about onboarding, but I did briefly touch on subsequent use cases, and Andy Lee's transacting or initiating a deposit, say, into a bank account from being in America or whatever. Absolutely, we do. And we can offer it via API, via batch. We can help build up profiles of customers, and the machine computes information about me to really identify if I'm doing anything out of the normal. And it's the same methodology all the way through. It's about, let's look for the good. Is Andy Lee transacting? When did he last transact? Where did he last transact? What's his average value of transaction? Minimum, maximum? What's his variance from it? Are any anomalies present? Like my account is being accessed from a location it hasn't been seen before. And is that not knowing your customer, knowing what your customer does? If I sort of, I don't know, deposit £100 a month into an e-wallet, is it out of the norm that I'm suddenly depositing £1,000 or euros or whatever currency equivalent? So, please do reach out. We cover transaction monitoring. We cover log-on risks, we cover onboarding, we cover if someone's changing, would it make sense if someone's changing the address on their account a day after opening up a new account? All these sorts of use cases we cover. But the key message is we join up and utilize as part of orchestration data. So it's not just for a decision at that point in time. We work with our clients to identify what data do you want tracked to be referenced in the future, such as I am using the same device I used last time or within a location I've been seen in before.
Great. Another question, can you offer any risk scoring? I think we touched upon it as well, but
Yeah, well, when we go back to that digital picture, it was all very binary, yes and no's. And some companies just want clear yes and no's. So we can clearly do that. But we also have a series of algorithms that enable scorecards to be built where customers can set thresholds, like what is a high number of people you might want to expect to see at an address, what is a tolerable or expected distance between where someone's initiating an application from and where they actually live. And so we can work with our clients to deliver these scorecards. So it's not just purely around retrieving data, computing data. We can add scoring to add context to it, and it can be conditional scores. It can be computed scores. So there are various scorecard options we can deliver within the orchestration platform.
Great. Another question, what type of reports can you generate?
Well, yeah, and again, it's another part of orchestration. We're using data for decisions, data for analysis. And so the orchestration engine can also stream to our reporting dashboard, which we partner with a company called Looker, which was acquired, I think, by Google a few years back. And, it's one of the world's leading BI tools. And once data is streamed into that, customers can build their own dashboards, or our professional service team can on their behalf too. And then those dashboards can also, thresholds and criteria can be set to auto-generate reports and alerts off them too. So we have a reporting suite as well as other products such as case management and various user access control systems too.
Great. And you mentioned professional services. So I think I will jump into another question that I think is related, and that is, how would an onboarding to your services look like?
Well, look, we have templated best practice workflows for a start. We call it clone and go. We could say to clients, here's a fixed API for that, which is the same as a single vendor connection. Here's all the documentation, the open API spec, start with that. Yeah. However, one of the strengths of the tool, we're not just a vendor connection. We can actually say, throw us your data in your own headers and formats. So the very part of the design process, and we have a design tool, is where we customers detail the information they capture during an application. We can then instantly create a bespoke API for them. So they don't even have to do the mappings to our headers and formats. And the same happens with the response data, irrespective of which country. We can still return the same data in the same standard headers and formats, even though the various vendors would have disparate ones. So part of the process is, what data does a client capture? That's the input data. We then talk to the clients about the types of services that they wish to utilize. And then we provide a whole library of this is all the data we could get. So that's the big data element. And then we say, but what do you actually want processing? And it really is a tick cross exercise. So we're now reducing the big data, which is the whole point, having access to it, but only processing what's needed. And then it's what data do you need then for the API response? So they get a bespoke. What data from that do you want tracked for audit? What data do you want tracked for future reference? What data do you want streamed for reporting? What data do you want to appear in the case management tool to prioritize? Like, show me any applications with a geolocation review today, or where a vendor has said this is suspect. And what data do you need to review cases? These are all those components of orchestration. So we sit down with clients. We can either give best practice templates with fixed APIs and say, go and connect just like you would a vendor, or we can run a 1 to 2 hour workshop and take them through this process of input data, retrieve data from vendors, output data. And we're getting quite good at this now and quite fast. and we can get clients live. It's not a lengthy project. For a client, it's the same as a single vendor API connection, but even easier. But quickly on that, we've also been offering to a lot of customers the ability to run POCs, to test the services. And that can be done without even an API connection, with just a CSV using our batch upload portal, which converts it and sends it in chronologically as if it was a real-time API call. And that can enable the assessment of some of these new types of services that might not have been used in the Nordics before as well. And those POCs are starting to become quite popular as well. So please, anyone out there, do reach out to your account manager if you'd like to discuss the idea of running a POC.
Yes, great. So I think the last one is, how much of the work can actually be automized? What's a reasonable target? And I think the question is towards the processes around KYC and so on.
Well, it's pretty much fully automated. It really is. In this modern tech world, API connections, real-time request responses, and you make that single API connection to the orchestration endpoint, which is controlled via the workflow that we showed earlier. And a customer can be accepted automatically real-time. But there will always be processes, and there will always be step outs. And whether that's moving to an asynchronous process where a customer has to upload documents or take part in a proof of life sort of video selfie thing, or do checks on forged documents, or stream to our case management tool, where you might have, or our clients might have, risk and compliance or credit risk teams who want to review applications. But what they do want in this world of big data is to be able to see the data that's of interest in that pool of data. So even that system can nicely flag things in a red, amber, green system. So, in one screen for an agent, they can see the items in red instantly. So yeah, the aim is to fully automate as much as possible, but very mindful that some regulations may dictate documentations or proof of life. Or clients' own policies might be, we will review all applications, or from a transaction monitoring perspective, any transactions that breach these policy rules must be reviewed. And so those transactions can be streamed and filters applied and case queues created for manual intervention, which will always be needed, even in the digital world.
Great. I think that was the last question. So I think it's time to wrap up. If you're interested to reach out to me, if you have more questions, I'm happy to set up a meeting with colleagues throughout Europe. We're spread out all over, so I'm pretty sure we have someone local that can meet you and discuss any topics if you're listening in. And thank you, Andy, and thank you, Jasper, for taking the time to help us with this. And thank you, everyone. And don't forget to meet us at Penningtvättdagarna in Stockholm, 3rd and 4th of May.